Did I write walking around like a drunk old man? I feel like I just wrote walking around like an old man. Did you add the drunk part?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
I did. The drunk part was immediately after the race, and the old man part was like for the past week or so.
So we are going to recap our Clinton adventure because there was a lot of adventure in it. Um, so yeah, I guess maybe we should start talking about, we start from the end, how we did, and then we go back to the preparation part. So in the end, we ended up fourth place mixed in the pro division, which is what we were aiming for. And I guess it was like also fourth place mixed overall because we were fourth amongst both the pros and the amateurs. And I would say we wanted to be a little bit closer to the third place than we ended up, but it was okay given everything that had happened. And overall, thumbs up for me.
I'd say for myself, I really just wanted to finish the race, finish the race in one piece, without having flipped. Didn't quite get that part, um, and didn't want to bonk, which almost happened. But like, still, we had a sprint to the finish, which if I was truly bonking, I don't think we could have pulled off. So all in all, I'd say extremely successful, given that we finished, number boat 28 out of 48 over the line, including all the men's teams. Like, I'm not, too deep in the community, but that seems pretty respectable given that to me at least, very challenging conditions, especially this year since the river was so low.
Someone yesterday at IDBR was saying something to me about, oh, how challenging it must be. And I was like, oh, yeah, I forgot until this year how technical it is. Because it really is technical. Because I feel like the past 3 times I did it was like, oh, am I going to survive 63 miles? Or, it doesn't matter what happens in between, but am I going to survive the distance or not? But this year was really about like focusing on the technical parts of it for me, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there really was only a few times where you could like let your mind relax, like these some long stretches where it was like just wide river, no riffles, no rapids, but that didn't happen too often. We had Goodyear, we had some bits and pieces downstream of Oneonta, but that was few and far between. Otherwise, like, you are staring ahead at whatever's coming at you next and figuring out like, okay, how are we going to tackle this one? And pray to God that there's another boat that'll show you how to do it that's ahead of you, which fortunately we had that a lot, which I think helped out.
So would you say, on a scale of 1 to 10, the discipline of marathon canoe, one being it's a piece of cake, it's not technical at all, everybody is a baby, to 10, it's really freaking difficult. What would you rank marathon canoe?
I honestly can't think of any other sport that's harder, like other paddle sport that's harder, and in terms of like technical ability, maybe like pure whitewater.
Whitewater, yeah.
Yeah, like
That
maybe
looks
maybe
terrifying.
yeah. For instance, we've got a whitewater community here in DC, and they talk to me about how they go down, Great Falls sometimes, like crazy people. And I've seen that periodically, and it looks like it'll kill you, which if you don't train right, it would. But you know, that's yeah, that's probably the only thing harder, I think. So perhaps marathon canoe gets an 8 or 9, and whitewater gets a 10.
Solid. All right, so let's talk about preparation for the race. What did you do?
Oh gosh, I honestly think that I did as much as I could, given the resources I had. All the time that I had available, the boats and equipment I had at my disposal, the logistics of like meeting up with people that know how to marathon canoe, and uh, like receiving guidance from them. Um, so I think I did as much as I could, but I really wish I could have done more. I will say, like, it was great paddling with, somebody that was my age, a friend of mine, lots of experience. It was pretty challenging partnering up with someone that was like a 4-hour drive away. Which, in an ideal world, we're in the canoe like all the time, the same canoe, training together, learning each other's, quirks and ins and outs constantly. But, we didn't have that luxury, but we pulled it off. Um, so with that, like, since we were so far apart, we had the opportunity to like meet up periodically and just use these long weekends to get as much time together as possible. That was really valuable. Um, you were finishing grad school this last semester, so that was a big hurdle that we had to work around, and by God, we pulled it off, which was fantastic.
There were other
Um,
hurdles too, because there were several weekends and like because we went into the season thinking, oh, we're gonna paddle together once a month and we're gonna alternate who goes where. That did not happen. We
yeah,
paddled, well, the first time we paddled together this year, was it March?
yes, and that was because, at least my impression, and others have told me similarly, like, this was a really hard winter. Like the winter just kept going. The weather was really unpredictable. It was just cold for a really long time. And we'd say like, all right, we're meeting up this weekend, and like it would just be like terrible weather, really windy, or like, oh, it's snowing now, or something like that.
East Coast problems.
Yeah.
And you had your little car mishap too.
Yeah, that was a real drag. You need a car to get yourself around with this. So yeah, my our car was out of commission for like at least a month, um, which really didn't help the situation at all.
Yeah, and then I think this kind of like is a part of a broader conversation that we could probably talk about for hours about like the ability to break into marathon canoe, not just like breaking in, but also like being new and trying to do well with it, which is what we were trying to do. There's
Mhm.
so many resources, like people resources, like you're talking about, like finding people who know what they're doing and are more experienced than you. And then like they have a boat that's like a good pro boat and like they have paddles that you can use and stuff. Like that's the whole thing that you have to have all of these things working for you. And you probably also have to have your own car to get to these places because they're kind of far out to paddle. So yeah, that's a bigger thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I was definitely feeling that because yeah, I think when we started this journey, like last year, maybe a little longer than a year ago, I wasn't fully sold that I really wanted to get into marathon canoe like long term. So it was a bit of a challenge to figure out like, all right, do I need to get my own paddle? Can I borrow somebody's paddle? Is somebody gonna trust me to like have their fancy ZRE paddle, which tends to, scrape rocks on a regular basis and not like damage it? And maybe I should just get my own. Maybe I don't know. So that was definitely a challenge. Of course, now I've decided that I think I'm going to be in the sport long term. So that's shifted a bit, but yeah, and it does create some more barriers. Like these rivers are beautiful, but they are they are kind of hard to get to. They're far out. There's no public transit out to them, that's for sure.
Hmm. Can you talk a little bit about your training for the race?
Yeah, so, and I have to credit you for this because you gave me the great big book of endurance racing. And I believe it's by Phil Maffetone. I know some folks that say like, oh, maybe the Maffetone method isn't the best, but the point where I was at, like, give me any structure on how to be a good endurance athlete was going to be a benefit. So I read that thing and my mind exploded. Like it just opened up just new ways of thinking about how to be a good endurance athlete. And so I couldn't wait to like implement some of those practices, like the degree with which you train your aerobic system, you can how you do your nutrition to make sure that you're fueling for not just on race day, but certainly for like throughout the regular training schedule. I learned very quickly it's definitely a garbage in, garbage out situation. You eat good food and you have good workouts. It's amazing. But I knew that going into this, my aerobic system was probably a little more on the deficient side. So I really wanted to lean into developing that as much as humanly possible. So it was, as much time in the boat as I could get. I had a dry suit. I was fortunate enough to get a dry suit once the year started. So I was using that. And when it was safe to do so, I went out, trying to capture as much daylight as I could and tried to rack up as many hours in this stock C1 that I was borrowing from a generous canoe friend. Um, I was also fortunate to have like a flexible work schedule, so I could get off work at like 3, squeeze in like almost 2 hours before it was sundown, and I really didn't want to be out in like 30-degree weather after dark. That's just sketchy. Um, but yeah, sank as many aerobic hours as possible. Some days it wasn't nice enough, so I used a paddle erg. Um, and some days, I my back was just too tired, but I wanted to keep working, so I went for runs and got back into running, which was great. But yeah, it was really all about just developing my aerobic system as much as humanly possible, because I knew that was going to be the key, the key to success, if you will. However, as we did some races, particularly Wessels, I think Wessels like really woke me up to like, I need to know some really important skills um, to be able to get through this race. So, being able to lean the boat, being able to just have like good reflexes, like a good brace reflex, a good like, see an obstacle and just like post and not have my stern have to tell me what to do all the time. So like that intuition and those skills. So the last month, I leaned as hard as I could into um, trying to develop that. I got out with some canoe friends up on a more challenging river nearby, and we just ran some tricky spots over and over until like I could do it without thinking as hard. Um, and then in the C1, just trying to test the limits of like how far I could lean this thing, which turns out was pretty far. And I think that really helped, especially when we were going through, the first section or two of the Clinton, because like that's all you're doing is leaning it back and forth.
Yeah. I was very impressed when we finally got back in the boat together, because we hadn't been in the boat for like 2-3 weeks because Wessels and then nothing and then the race. You were leaning very well in the first in the upper half, and I was very impressed with that. Did you swim at all in your training?
No, which tells me I probably wasn't leaning or trying hard enough. The river was admittedly not at a temperature that I would feel super comfortable dumping. I mean, like I would have been safe, but like it's like 60-degree water. It'll suck. So I didn't do it. I was a little more conservative than I probably could have. Like right now, the river is at like, you know, above 70 degrees. It's nice and cozy now. So I could probably try even harder, see like really test the limits if I wanted to.
Yeah, you just got to get somewhere clean.
Yeah, clean rivers are hard to come by.
Bad. So, how many hours did you have going into the Clinton? If you're willing to share that, well, no, I guess you already shared it.
Yeah, I posted that publicly for the
To
for
scare
transparency
people.
to scare people. Well, folks ask me periodically, like, James, are you just a superhuman? How do you train so much? And I'm like, you just train at a low heart rate, high volume. You listen to your body, and you'd be amazed at what your body can do if you ramp up gently enough. Um, Fortunately, I'd had a couple of seasons, particularly one season where I really had to, of course, learn the hard way how to train at a high volume with at a low intensity. And I learned what happens if you train at a high intensity and high volume. You crash. But so before the Clinton, I had 187 hours of paddling, which was split between C1, C2, dragon boat, outrigger canoe, just OC1. I didn't do any OC6. I had 44 hours of paddle erging, which, depending on who you ask, it's equivalent or almost equivalent to paddle erging. I did 16 hours of running, so that put me up to almost 250 hours altogether of training.
That's a lot.
I
I ended up with like 111 or something water time.
which honestly is absolutely incredible, given that you also had to finish your degree in that time as well.
How I did it, I do not know.
And the logistics of you getting to water are a little trickier than it is for me. I'm a very easy 12-minute bike ride to and from my boathouse. You've got a 45-minute commute.
No, it's like an hour and change during rush hour.
Yeah,
Through New York City traffic. It's
that's rough.
horrible. Yeah, that's rough, buddy. It is rough. Yep, it's sad, but we're gonna change that at some point. All right, shall we talk about our spring training camp briefly?
Our mini camp.
Mini camp. So I came down to DC. Well, I was also freaking out about I had a group project to do. I had gotten feedback from my master's project paper, and I was preparing for a demo lesson for a job that I was going to interview for like the week I got back from my spring break. So there was a lot of things going on. And then I came down anyway with BOULDER, and we had a good time. We went to, where did we travel to? That one river where it was like off the highway that was a little shady, but there's lots of nature. That was fun.
Yeah, the Patuxent River.
Patuxent, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of nature. And there wasn't very technical until we got to like almost the tippy top, and then it started to get a little windier, but then we had to stop.
Mm-hmm.
It was mostly just like getting butt time.
Yep.
In the boat. And then we went to the Monocacy, I think even the next day. That was even more technical, with fast running water coming around a curve, and like that's a really good spot to kind of practice anticipating what the water is going to make the boat do.
Yeah.
And even throw in some portages there. That was fun. And then I guess like there were some moments where it was like there was a fork in the river, and it's like go left or right, trying to read the river, like what looks like there's enough water versus what doesn't.
Yeah. It was definitely a bit of an adventure paddle, that one, because we had some good guidance, but via email from a local paddle buddy that runs that river all the time, and generally told us what to do. But it's different actually doing it, and it varies depending on the river level. So we had to just kind of make good choices and hoped they were good.
Yep. Anything else notable? We ate a lot of really good food.
That was nice. I mean, you got to fuel these engines, but yeah, I think the most valuable part was getting in those two rivers. We also spent some time in the Anacostia River, which was, it's perfectly flat, perfectly boring, but it's butts and seats time, which we needed at that point. We had aspirations to meet up in January and February, and like that didn't happen. So March had to make up for it.
Yeah. If we could redo our March training trip, what would you do differently?
I would see if we can squeeze out some more hours on the Monocacy, because it was the closest, I think, to the conditions we had on the Clinton, including how shallow it was in certain spots. And so I think, spending more time there, it is a pain to get out to from DC because it takes an hour one way. So it really eats up your time. But if we could have squeezed out maybe one or two more runs there, that would have been really good. but you know, we were limited by our own energy levels and the weather and yada 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 yada. So
What else would have been good would be if we could have done a couple of Pine Barrens runs.
that would have that
The
would, yeah.
water's higher in the spring with all of like the snow melt, I guess. It's where the water levels rise from. But yeah, because I feel like that of all of the rivers that I've paddled on that aren't the Susquehanna is the one that emulates most closely the upper half of the Clinton.
I totally agree. Yeah, that as you described it to me, the portion from the swamp down to Index was just the Pine Barrens, but
On
forever.
steroids.
Yeah, just kept going.
Yep. So then after we paddled together for a week, you had a dragon boat camp. And then I went out to California for some outrigger stuff. So that was difficult. Also, like grad school plus trying to peak for like 2 different races in the springtime was special. That kind of like, since it was Wild Buffalo, since it was OC, I kind of had to be putting in both marathon canoe and OC time. So that was super challenging. It really should have been like one or the other. And like my training wasn't really ideal for either conditions. Like it wasn't technical enough in the marathon canoe, and it wasn't like wishy-washy enough probably for the outrigger canoe. So it's just kind of hard on the East Coast. You got to deal with what you got to deal with. And then you had obligations with your dragon boat club too. So that's like, more time, different boat, not a boat that's necessarily going to help you prepare for a marathon canoe.
Yeah, absolutely. And also throwing in there, I wanted to have a good showing at a local race that our sister club, Washington Canoe Club, was putting on. It was the first outrigger race of the season, and like I was putting in a bunch of hours, and I thought, oh well, wouldn't it be fun to see how I'm doing? But it's in an outrigger canoe, so there was also that cross pressure for me to like put hours in the OC1 versus the C1 versus got to coach my dragon boat team. So that, yeah, there's a lot of like time splitting happening. So that, yeah, it again, like you said, in an ideal world, it's like just marathon canoe time, just practicing skills, just getting hours button seat time.
I
But
mean, I think that like goes to like we deserve more credit for what we were able to accomplish, because a lot of the people who we were racing against only do marathon canoe. Now, granted, everyone has like life obligations and family and work obligations, but when they're training on a marathon canoe. Whereas for us, it's like, oh, us being pulled into a bajillion different directions, paddling directions. So it's a lot.
yeah, it is kind of fun to at this point be able to just jump into any boat and be pretty decent at it.
It's a fun skill to have. So do you want to talk a little bit about Wessels?
Oh yeah. So I'll admit, Wessels, I was pretty nervous for because I had heard from some other folks in the community that like, oh boy, the river level's pretty high, especially because our teammate Megan, she had been up there, I think the previous weekend, and the river level was like super duper high. It was like 10 feet. And it was all like doom, like, oh God, it's like really dangerous conditions south of Wells Bridge and stuff. And fortunately, it was only like 5 feet something when we raced.
The harbinger of doom tried to bring the doom, and the doom was not brought.
Yeah, yeah, and and the start to this race was really built up in my mind. I was very nervous about just the absolute cluster turning around that buoy that was very short after the start, and like the fact that the channel was kind of narrow and it was going to be super bumpy, and I didn't have the most confidence in my ability to balance, so I was just like, hold on to my butt. I hope we don't swim. The water's really cold today. Um, I think I surprised myself with how well we managed not only just like that piece of it, but just the whole darn thing.
Or how we were the first mixed team to the buoy.
That was pretty spectacular, actually.
Yep.
I got some warm fuzzies for that. It's like, well, we don't know much, but I know how to sprint a start.
And it wasn't even, it was like we were kind of even-ish with another mixed team at one point. And then they kind of like, we were trying to, edge each other out to the buoy, but then you like pressed on the gas and we shot out. And I was like, oh no, here we go. We're going to cut them off in the turn because, the turn's going like, the turn's going like this. And like buoy's here. And I'm turning, and as my stern comes out, like their bow can't like go as sharp as they want. So that was that.
Yeah. If there's one thing I think also served me well from outrigger was like knowing when to like specifically flat water outrigger. Like that, there's a special brand of OC1 and OC2 that we get out here. It's very flat water, and so you gotta be able to handle yourself really tightly around other boats and figure out when it's time to step on the gas, when you can catch a bump from another boat or something like that. I think that served us well because I figured like I just knew like in my soul, like if I step on it now, like we can do it.
Yeah, good instincts there. And then, so we made it around the buoy with no incident. And then the upstream portion, that's going to benefit a more experienced team. So that's basically what happened. The two mixed teams that we knew were faster than us, that's when they made up the ground on us. And then you go up 4.5 miles, you cross the river a bunch of times. There's a bunch of weird cross currents as coming around corners, and you have to, cut them and cross the river a certain way, all stuff that marathon canoers know. Upriver racing is different than downriver racing, PSA. So yeah, you go up 4.5 miles, then you start coming down. So then you like repeat the course that you basically just did. But then after you get to the start, you keep going like, what is it, 12 more miles?
Sounds about right. Yeah.
And then you get to Sydney, which is the second to last town. No, the last town before the finish town in the Clinton. There wasn't, I feel like there's a bunch of like small rapids from Wellsbridge to Sydney.
Small rapids.
Small rapids. They were pretty rapidy the day that we went because the water was so high, but I think we managed them pretty well. There might have been like a couple of rapids where if I were to switch us, we would like dip and like it would make the boat get all squirrely. So I learned very quickly, okay, if we're going to be on a rapid, just keep us on the same side for a while. It'll be okay. We'll survive. We're dragon boaters. We got this. That's what I learned, but it didn't actually have to end up using that during the Clinton because the rapids weren't big enough to really be scary. And then we ended up, what were we, like a minute 20 seconds behind the first, or maybe 2 minutes 20 seconds or something behind the first place mixed team, and then like 20-ish seconds behind the second place team. So we really made up ground from that upstream section where we lost a bunch of time.
Yeah. And I remember two rapids in particular because of the like the the amount of consternation they caused me because I saw how big they were. I had some flashbacks to the Flame Rapids at Nationals the year previous where we dumped it because we didn't hit them at just the right spot. So like I was little flashback there, a little panic, but we stayed upright even though like there was one that was just gargantuan, and I was happy on Clinton weekend that this is like very manageable and like maybe half the size. So that was nice. But yeah, I remember two rapids in particular that were just gnarly as hell, that everybody was talking about afterwards, like, dude, did you see those rapids? I was very pleased that we managed to gain back some of that distance on those mixed teams. We did have a challenge getting around a boat on the way upstream, which kind of wore me out, at least because like I like my sprinter's instinct. I just wanted to take it. Like I wanted to get around them, but I had to be patient. And I think
Yeah, that's kind of frustrating. They kept blocking us, and it's like, we're obviously faster than you. Can you like just let us go? Because like it was a men's team. obviously like you guys are like further behind your like field than we are. So there's like, what's the point? Like, I get like, wanting to be like a place further, but like inevitably we were gonna pass them. And it kind of
Yeah,
took just like, I think it was there was a couple of parts where they crossed at a different point than we did, and we were making up time on them because we were crossing, or I was crossing the boat at a better time than they were. And then we'd like get closer to them, like make up some of the distance, and then they would like swing back in front of us. And we just had to do that over and over until there was a point where we kind of like gunned it across the river and then got in front of them.
yeah, I think I remember after trading back and forth with them a couple times, I just got fed up, and like we had one good crossover where we like nailed it, and I was like, I'm just gonna just we're gonna go for it. I want to dump these guys, and we just went, and so that was nice.
Yeah. So then that race was a good confidence booster for us, I think. And then you said earlier, you made you realize, like, oh, I need some skills to do this race.
Yeah, how about that?
Yeah, you need skills to do marathon canoe. What? And so then afterward, we went out from Portlandville down to Oneonta, and that's when we hit the boulder,
The boulder of doom.
the boulder of doom. It was really challenging because the water was so high, and like it was like right around a corner. It's a blind corner, and then it's like just there, and you're like, oh no. I was planning to go right, which is hard because there's like you got a branch on a tree and then like this much space for you to go through. And I was like, we're going there. And then the water said, no, fast water. You come to me. And I was like, and then I tried heading you over to the left so that we could like veer right. That didn't work because the water was just like too strong. And we were both like just kind of deers in
Help,
headlights.
help.
Help. And then we lightened up a bunch, and then we smacked the rock. There was a horrible crunch and a scrape. And then my knees went into the rock. And then
And then a
we
boat
jumped.
went into you.
And then Kelly and Megan were right behind us, and they almost impaled me. I feel like this is like maybe like the third time that I've almost gotten impaled in the last calendar year.
You must have a target on your back for boats or
I
something.
I really must. And then they flipped, and then they lost their foam block. And then we were all struggling to get to the side. So it was a little bit of a sad day.
Yeah, if Wessels the race was a confidence booster, this was definitely eating some serious humble pie for me, especially because I'm still trying to develop that intuition of like, okay, obstacle, do this, and we came around that corner really quickly, and I just saw the gushing water over all these things, and I was like, what do you do? And
You avoid it.
yeah, and like right or left or and so I froze and like oh, then we ran into the rock.
Boom.
Yeah,
Ow!
thankfully the damage to your boat was perhaps minor, all things considered. It was easily fixable. It
Thank you,
did
Jeff
not,
Patterson.
yes, shout out, but it definitely did not sound good on the way down.
No, it did not, but it really wasn't that bad. It was like a very minor crack, but it was a crack on an old repair, so that you have to get fixed. So that left me boatless for the last 2 weeks leading up to the race. And like I couldn't prepare the boat the way I wanted to. And like you got to put stickers on, Velcro in, but it ended up working out.
Yeah, and then the day after, I believe you had to head back, and but Kelly and Megan and we stuck around. I managed to rustle up a, very generous Canoe Buddies C1. Shout out to Joe Schlimmer, thank you. And he let me borrow his C1, and we did the section from Index down to Portlandville, just to get a taste of what the swamp was like. And I had never really been in a technical river in a pro boat before. I had been in a pro boat before on like a reservoir, I had been in the C1, like stock C1, super stable, and thought like, well, how hard could it be? I'll just paddle slow and let the water take me where it will. And actually, that was a very good experience, taking that section, because I think for one, it was just fun. Just zooming around. I'd periodically shout out Marco Polo to Megan and Kelly so they knew that I was still alive and right side up. um, but I think that was also a bit of a confidence booster. Like, okay, like I've gained enough know-how in C1 to be able to handle some, decently tricky sections with, well, at least I didn't flip. I probably didn't run it very efficiently, but I got it, like I scouted it, which was very important to know it, like expecting what's going to happen when we hit that section again on race day.
Yeah, so then by that point you had scouted almost the whole river, minus the first 5 miles and maybe like the last 6 miles or so.
There was a section just after Oneonta.
Oh yeah, Oneonta to Wells Bridge.
Mhm.
There's some stuff in there, but it's fine. You got most of it.
Yeah, that section was relatively mild, I'd say. There was like one very tricky rapid that I heard later that tripped up a number of boats, including some teammates of mine. But I think we handled it well. Partly, I think
I don't
because
even remember it,
yeah,
so it must have
same.
been fine.
Yeah, I think because we saw how one boat took it, and then we took it the same way, and it's like, okay, cool.
The importance of following people. Let's talk a little bit about prepping the weekend of. Your pit person, my pit person. I have the trusty Wardell, my forever pit crew, and I think he deserves pro status. And then you had your sister-in-law.
Yes, and I don't think she really knew what she was getting herself into, but thankfully, Wardell was there, who is like just so perfect on logistics management. He's got it all laid out in like a 10-point plan and like maps, and has contingencies on contingencies, and was a really great like pit coach, if you will, like a pit mentor. Um, so Maddie came away from it with a great experience. She's like, I would totally do that for you again, and now I have a well-trained pit person, so boom.
So when you do it C1, she'll pit for you. She's got to learn how to drive better. So then my boat was already in upstate, which was good, probably because then we didn't have to drive a boat with a car up there.
We'll get to that part later.
We'll get to that later. Then I picked up my boat from Jeff. The repair was only about $100, which is, not a little bit of money, but also like for boat repair purposes, it's not that much. And then I sat in the grass of like the finish line, like parking lot area, and I stickered the boat, put on all of my Velcro, which I found like 10-pound Velcro works very well. And there really was like not as much boat prep as I had like anticipated. I got myself all worked up over it. It really wasn't that big of a deal. And then we went to Portlandville and practiced a pit, figured something out that worked. And then it was off to prepping food and stuff. So I was trying a new food this time and drink. Last year I used scratch during the race and I had a gut bomb by 40 miles in. And then I found out with the ensemble too, by about 6 or 7 hours in, I also had a gut bomb from tailwind. So throughout the past year since then, I've been, traveling around getting advice from people. And when I went to California for Wild Buffalo, I stayed with Susie and Risa out there, and they said, oh, you have to try Vitargo if that's the case, with all the gut bombs, because it's like some sort of carb derived from barley And so it's like directly bioavailable. It like digests really easily, and it's not like a sugar-based carb. It tastes very good. I use the mango flavor, and then so that plus like electrolytes. So I was using Noon. It made it taste pretty good. And then it was recommended to me you should start eating real food as soon as possible. Get all of your carbs from real food as soon as possible, and protein as well, because your body can't handle liquid carbs. It's not meant to handle liquid carbs for more than a couple of hours. So I was like, oh, maybe that's why. Like I was trying to do liquid carbs for an entire race before, and then my stomach would get upset. So then I was testing out for like the 2 weeks before the race, chicken and avocado sandwiches, and that worked pretty well. And then it was a matter of figuring out like how to access and eat that during the race. So I figured out a new setup where I used like little Tupperware containers and Velcroed that to the bottom of the boat. Sans lid, which I learned you need a lid later, and it worked pretty well. What was your food prep and contents made it like? What was that like for you?
Well, honestly, listening to you here talk about it, I was playing checkers while you were playing chess. I was definitely not as intelligent on what I picked. The So for context, the previous longest race I'd ever done was Chattajack, and that's 31-ish miles. I nutritioned extremely poorly for that, and I was like I was totally dying by the end due to probably some wacky blood sugar thing that was happening to me. I had a 2-liter Camelback of Gatorade powder in water, and then I had a whole bunch of Cliff Bars and a couple of goos, and there's just way too much processed sugar for me to have, and I felt terrible afterwards. So the only way to go from is up from there. I had previously tried the Scratch Super Fuel powder, which worked well for me in some medium distance races, like 3 hours or so.
Too.
What's that?
Look funky too.
Yeah, it dissolves very strangely. If you see it, you'll know what I mean. I tried it during nationals last year, worked like a charm. Much shorter races, of course, but I had briefly experimented with Perpetuum because everybody, I'd heard through the community like Perpetuum's the one you should get. This is what all the top guys use, and I found it worked great for me. And then turns out you couldn't buy Perpetuum anymore. It was all sold out by Wessels. Like it was extremely hard to find. You could only get the less popular flavor that I wasn't a big fan of. And then by the time of the Clinton weekend, you just could not get it, even if you wanted to pay a bunch of money. Fortunately, I had the foresight to immediately order some Scratch Super Fuel, and by Clinton weekend, you couldn't get that either. It was sold out on their website. So I was happy I bought that. And I was like, well, at least I've got this to get me through. I hadn't really had a chance to think very hard about what my balance should be between liquid calories versus like real food calories. I had to have a lot of my teammates help me figure that out, and I think I struck an okay balance. I had 600 calories of super fuel in each of my liters, in each of my jugs. I had 3 jugs of powder, and then I had 1 jug of just water and electrolytes. I put electrolytes in all of them, just in case I didn't want it. Any more powder. I had 1 jug that was just water, just in case I was having a gut bomb. And then I relied on mostly what had worked in training. I really liked dates, like dried dates. That worked really well for me. It was sugary, but it didn't like spike my blood sugar as far as I could tell. So I, had these Ziploc baggies with the Velcro on it, the kind that zip closed with the little like zipper tab, as opposed to just like sliding closed with your fingers, which was crucial later by your recommendation. And so I stuffed some baggies full of like some dried mango, some peanut butter pretzels, and some dates, and slapped those bad boys on the inside of the canoe. Turns out that was great because when we flipped, it stayed on there, which was a miracle. The foam block was gone, but though that Velcroed baggie of food was still there, so at least only one of us was bonking afterwards.
Moral of the story: Velcro everything to your boat.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And I think that nutrition served me all right until about the last hour. There was probably some other complicating factors that was affecting me, mainly my inability to pee. Basically, you can't take in liquid calories if you your body says like you've got no more room for liquid now, sir. um, and in hindsight, I had kind of dense food. There was a point at which, I mean, Katie probably remembers this. Like, I was like, I hate eating. Eating sucks. I don't want to eat this. And you were like, eat, damn it, you need to eat. So like, I think I would have planned some more fresh fruit in hindsight. Thankfully, Wardell insisted, and I think you insisted on packing some fresh oranges. I downed those suckers when like everything else was failing me, and like I just woke up. It was awesome. I needed that like that sugar, fruit sugar. It really worked. Yeah, so I think more fresh fruit in the future and less dried fruit, perhaps.
Yeah, it's something with the fructose, like you can't, I think the Maffetone book says it too. And I know also this other book that I enjoy, Roar by Dr. Stacy Sims, says it too, with like fructose, it's harder for your body to break it down over time, and it's like not as like bioavailable as other forms of sugar, and like it can cause gut bombs. So you have to be careful with how much fructose you're having. So that's why for my food, I didn't eat the orange until the end. And then like my drinks weren't like fructose based sugar too. So I feel like, I don't know, the little place that we stayed at was like a really cute place to kind of set up, and it was nice to be with another team there, Kelly and Megan, because they were sitting
Number
alongside
one.
us, and it was fun to like, chat, try to, blow off some steam before the race, and I don't know, it was like a good environment to kind of de-stress, I thought. What did you think?
Yeah, absolutely. There are few races anymore. Like I've seen a lot of races in various kinds of boats. I've been to, we've been to world championships for Dragon Boat, which is it's very high stress, very big stakes. Your entire team is depending on you to execute. Um, really big OC races. This is probably the race that I felt like the most stressed about, just because of like how big it was in my mind. And I know my other teammates felt that way too. Like Megan was talking about like this is like this is the most anxious she's ever felt before a race as well, which just says a lot because she's like raced high stress races even more than we have. So being able to blow off steam was very helpful. Um, the bed and breakfast was very comfortable for us to like get our shit in order. Get like alternate trying to use the kitchen to get all of our food ready versus like getting the boat ready out on the lawn. That was really great. And then we're all in one place to like carpool places in case car troubles happen.
It did happen.
Yeah.
And then outfits, the hat. Where is
Yes.
it?
It's drying actually. So I figured after 9 hours, it probably needed to be washed. So it's currently drying. But
Did the Sharpie make it?
oh yes, the Sharpie's never going away.
Oh, good.
It's never going away. You know, I feel like it's imbued with some special vibes now. The vibe of like, let's go. That was awesome, and it was you know, also very functional. I did not like, I got a little sun kiss like reflecting from the water, even though I put on sunscreen. But I knew if I did not have like a whole brim around my hat, like I would have gotten roasted.
Um, it's been recommended to me via text message and showing it to me that we talk about our pre-race meal, the Italian food in Oneonta.
Yes, many carbs, all of the carbs. Keep eating even when you don't want to keep eating. I think you described it in the like days leading up to the race. Like I feel like I'm force feeding myself, and I thought, yep, that's what I feel like too. But we will need it later. Yeah, the
Paid off
Italian,
for me.
yeah, yeah, the Italian food, that was clutch. A lot of pasta. Something that we know would work well with our systems. We weren't going to try any like interesting new spices, new cuisines. Nope. I brought a pre-made batch of steel cut oats. It's like been the breakfast that I've had every morning for the past 6 months, just because I know how reliable it is, and how my body handles it. So like I had a big old uh, bowl of that the morning that we woke up, which was perfect because it was exactly what I needed. I wanted something predictable and carb heavy, and that was it.
I also had, well, I had oats, but overnight oats with some yogurt for some protein as well. And I was just chilling, sipping my coffee, trying to go to the bathroom. It was all good. Because going to the bathroom, going number 2 before a race like this, you have to do it because you do not want to do it during the race.
No, 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 no.
I've had that experience. It is not fun.
Yeah, you don't want to have to pull over and run off into the woods.
That is what I had to do. Bless your heart, Jeff DeFeo. You are a saint. Anywho, sleeping. I slept very well. It was a comfy bed. The person that I shared the room with doesn't snore. It doesn't roll or anything. I slept like a baby. But you, on the other hand,
I slept terribly. I think I slept like 6 hours would be generous, probably closer to like 5. Not ideal. And it was not to the like, it was not because of my sleeping conditions. Like it wasn't because I had like a crappy mattress. I mean, I had an air mattress. It did deflate, but like I've slept on deflated air mattresses before, and it was totally fine. Um, there were people that snored in my room, but like I sleep like a log. That doesn't wake me up. It was like genuinely like just nerves that kept me up all night. I bolted awake at like 4 a.m. My alarm was supposed to go off at 5, and I tried to like roll over and just like, come on, James, just get a little more sleep. And it's like, nope, you're awake now. Like, all right. And then I found out the rest of my room was also like bolted awake at 4, and could not go back to sleep. So, merp.
I guess after your 4th rodeo, you're just kind of used to it.
Guess so. Megan didn't practically sleep a wink that that night either. So I think it was definitely like
I
rookie
would have been a
nerves going
mess
on.
if I had no sleep. Yeah, we would have flipped at some point, like many more points than we already did, probably. All right. I guess we've been talking for an hour already. Let's finally talk about this race. So we get there, you forget your booties, you go back. Now then I'm start stressing out. That's the only time I was stressed the entire day, was when you ran back to get your booties and you weren't there and all these teams were putting in. And Maddie was standing there and was like, somebody has to tell James what to do sometimes. And I was like, I know, and I missed my opportunity.
You're not wrong. So
And
I only have it this much CPU available, and when it's maxed out with like stressing about a race, like sometimes stuff goes out the window.
in this case, it was shoes and realizing that you needed them.
But I remembered them, which was very necessary.
Yep. And then we paddled out. We tried to get to like left of the field because that's kind of where people go. And like, I guess in the end, that's like where all the fast people were. And then they play the Canadian anthem, then the American anthem or the United States anthem. And then
Hear no national anthem.
it's not even over. And the guy says go. And then we
That was
sprint.
early.
Yes,
Right
sprint
on
like
time,
only how
right there.
dragon boaters know how to sprint. I thought it was hilarious that like we've got the national anthem going on, but like periodically the guy in the starter boat would be like, back
Do
it
I
up,
see them?
just like interjecting, like, back it up, guys.
I'm sure they're in there.
Well, yeah, we sprinted off,
I don't see any boats
and
tipped over,
I had
so
been
that's a good
dreading the
sign.
start. Like in my mind, that was like the hardest thing. I didn't know, probably because I didn't know about all of the other hard things and what that was, but like the start was built up in my mind as like, you're gonna, if you're not prepared, you're gonna die. But I think, handled it pretty darn well. I think the start at Wessels was trickier. This is like, we sprinted out, we stayed with the pack. I mean, obviously faster boats started to pull away, but like we didn't get dusted, that's for sure.
Yeah, it was actually less worrisome than I thought. And I guess maybe it's because now I've had like more ocean experience and like have experienced a couple of one Wessels race, like Legends race, where that is more challenging given the width of the river and like the depth of the river too can make the waves really big. There were some wakes from other boats to contend with, like men's boats would like slide in near us and then it would like throw off a wake. And then like I would try to get us to clear water or make us like veer the other way. And then there'd be like another boat wake coming. And then like we were kind of getting tossed around a little bit there. And I didn't think actually that I was doing too great with it because, just trying to make sure we had really good power application while also maintaining the line and not running into anybody. It's a lot, but I think in retrospect, we did do pretty well. I was talking to someone after and she was like, yeah, you guys just like went, it was crazy. I was just trying to stay upright where you guys were just like going. So I was like, oh, okay. Like it must have like, maybe I wasn't 100% pleased with it, but it was still good. And I think for a time there, we were the first mixed team because in my peripheral on the left, I started to see Rebecca at one point, but it had been several minutes since the start. So I think we must have been first for a while. And then you get past the lake and then into like where the river starts. And there's like all these people that start cheering. And then you get toward the part of the lake where the portage is. And I look to my right and I see like the two mixed teams that are probably gonna, in my mind then, probably gonna be second and third. I was like, oh, they're a lot closer than I thought because our plan was to be one of the first boats out of the lake so that when we got to the river, we could start blocking people with our excellent steering. But then I was like, oh, this plan's not quite gonna work. But either way, there were like two exits to the portage section, and we ended up taking the more crowded one. And I saw the boat that ended up being second take the less crowded one to the right. But then when I was watching the video again, I noticed that it took them longer to get out there than it did to us. Like they landed earlier than we did at the portage, but we got out first and started trotting along the path before they did. And it was quite a cluster. What did you think about that situation?
Oh man, that was chaos. I had briefly so back in 2015 when I was first exposed to marathon canoe, I stayed in Ann Arbor, Michigan for a summer, and I had the privilege of doing Spikes, which is the race before the Asable. We didn't do it well. We finished literally last place, but we had an excellent start where you pick up the boat, you run, and it's just an absolute cluster, like people piling on top of each other trying to get into this teeny little channel. And I got, flashbacks to that when we were trying to like climb over teams to get into like this teeny little channel. I didn't expect so much like carnage on you specifically, but I suppose you're in like the line of fire. Um, I was trying really hard to not ram boats into people. I don't think I fully succeeded.
Thank you.
Yeah. Um, but so, it was definitely chaos. I briefly panicked because it was, the temperature was a little cooler and my glasses started to fog up like as we were putting the boat in. And I was like, this is a terrible time to not be able to see. But fortunately, once we got going, the wind, they defogged, but it was like a minute where it's like, just look at the boat in front of you, James. Don't hit anything. It was exactly as described, quite a cluster.
I think maybe because we were with maybe it's because we were with some of the more experienced racers or something. It wasn't as aggressive as I've experienced in the past, because in 2019 when I did it, I got cut off by a team going the wrong way. Like their bow person just ran in front of me, like crossed me going the wrong way. And like we were both like running alongside each other, and I was like, what is going on? And then I also heard that year that there was like two women's teams that got into a little bit of a scuffle, but we had no scuffles. People were very civilized. It seemed like when you got to the river, there was like a path, and then there was like a cut where you kind of had to like go down a dangerous looking hill, and then you could put in a little faster. So that number 2 team ended up doing that, and then they got ahead of us. But I was not about to like, try that, roll an ankle, and then not be able to finish the race. We were going to try to be safe and in one piece. And then there was a point where, just because there were so many different paddlers there, that there was like a holdup, and then I got a canoe to the butt crack, which was a new experience. And all I could say was, ow, like with a question mark. So that was pretty special. And then when we went to get in, you can kind of see this in a video that Wardell took. So on top of being an excellent pit person, he's an excellent race videographer. Where we got in, it wasn't shallow. And I was on the right side of the canoe and the shore was on the left. And so I had to hop in. I don't know if you could tell, but I like had to lift my leg up real high and then like get it in. Like you were ready to go. I was like, wait, I'm not in. So that took a couple of seconds, but I was nimble enough to do it. And then comes the Twisty section. It's a lot of leaning on sides, and like I had said forever ago, looking at the time. Oops, sorry people. I was very impressed with your leaning during some of that. And I think when we were at Portlandville the day before practicing the pit, we had done a little bit of leaning and like, kind of visualizing what would happen around these curves. And there was a point where I was switching, because when you're like kind of carving a turn, there's a point where like if we're both on the whatever side, then I'll come to this side so we don't swerve too far. But you were like, your lean had gotten so good, you were still leaning. And I was like, no, you have to flatten the boat out. And so then once we figured that out the day before, I knew to tell you to like flatten the boat out in that section. So it worked pretty well. Yeah, and then we did fine with that, I felt, although I did feel our power drop like quite a bit, because I think we were just kind of playing survival there.
Yeah, playing it safe, trying to just like stay upright, follow boats. I don't think I knew exactly how much power I should be applying, because I was trying to probably conserve a bit for later, because if I hammered it now, I wasn't going to have any later. And I remember being told like, this is the section where like, you don't really try to pass boats. Like this isn't really where you make moves. It's more just like run the course as best as you can. if a pass like falls into your lap, of course you take it. But I wasn't trying to like power up to pass any boats. In general, boats were passing us.
Yeah, which makes me think like maybe in the future we should practice like running the pines, but trying to like actually go hard. Because when we did it in the fall, it was like it felt really similar. We were just kind of, trying to take the right lines, not flip, which is fine, but I don't know. I don't know though, like how much if we had tried to like strong arm that section, how much it would have benefited us.
Yeah, I think we definitely landed there a bit above our weight, so to speak, because of how good of a start that we had. And then like, all right, as more experienced teams were coming up, like, that they were able to get ahead of us at that point, because they had more, technical ability and more confidence, perhaps.
Yeah, I don't know how many boats passed us before we flipped. But there were several, and all more experienced people. And then I think there was like the fifth place mixed boat came up, older paddlers paddling together, but like very experienced. I didn't realize who it was at the time, but yes, like very experienced people. So like all of the people that passed us like had made sense to me. So it was like kind of like we knew this was going to happen. To me, it seemed like a little earlier than I was expecting, but it's like at that point you can't really do anything about it. So it's no use like worrying about it. It's just, trying to make sure that we don't lose even more time. Then there was, people passed us, and then the swamp cut happened. And like last year, during the virtual Clinton, there wasn't quite enough water there. So there was a point where it's just like grass and like people coming to a dead stop, getting out, towing the boat a little bit, getting back in. And then I think this is again, you were like ready to go. I wasn't quite in. I had just gotten rammed in the calf, and my leg was hurting. And then to our left, there was a boat that had flipped. And then coming up from us behind us on the right, there was another boat that was like trying to go, go, go. And they flipped too. So I was like, we're not flipping. We're taking this a little easier.
Chaos.
And I was like, James, slow down. Not yet. I'm not ready. And then we went. And then the stick.
That damn stick.
That's stupid stick. So there was like, I guess, a log coming out from the left, a downed tree with like its branch like mostly in the water, and 1.5 feet sawed off of it. And you had to squeeze the whole field through there. And there was a team from Michigan or Quebec, maybe, that was in front of us. And I was like, oh, go right. Cause like I couldn't see how much of the branch was under the water. And the guy was like, left, go left. And I was like, huh? And then
Yeah, I think I had seen a team go over it, but
that's what a bunch of the teams ended up doing when we were there, sitting there. They were hitting it and going over it.
yeah, we got to see how many people got to run that stick section. Yeah, no, I think I saw that little section that was open, but we were kind of pointed one way, and like another deer in the headlights moment. It's like, oh God, what do we do? I knew, like in my soul, that I don't think we could have done a bump over, because like I'm a big dude. Bow's probably a little heavier than it should be. Like we probably would have like and eaten it anyway. So our only move would have been to have like seen this gap and like somehow done some like steering voodoo to like go through it.
Yeah, it would have been like a hard left, like let most of the boat go through, and then like a hard right. So you would have had to like post on the left and then like get me through, post back on the right. So we didn't like go into it was complicated. Like I did not set us up right for that.
Yeah,
And then we flipped and then had struggles getting back in the boat, some of us.
I think I was just like so floored that like, oh God, the only thing I wanted to do, stay upright, we did it. We missed that goal in the first 5 miles, and it was just like such a confidence hit. And also, I just like it was like I'm all wet. Boats are like going everywhere around us, and it's just like zoom, zoom, zoom. People passing by us, and I think I just like again, sometimes you just need to tell James what to do because his like CPU maxes out, and that was probably one of those moments. I like tried to drag the boat to the wrong side of the river, and then
Well,
we got to the right side of the river.
yeah, I was actually looking at the footage, and it would have been advantageous had we dragged it to the side that you were going to drag it to, but it would have been more dangerous because we would have had to like just let the river take us and then swam to the right. But we would have passed the obstacle, and it probably would have been easier for us to get in and like keep going with the rest of the boats. But from where I was in my vantage point, it looked like the left was the safest because like there was the branch, and like there was like a little eddy forming there with the river, and it was also a little closer for us to go that way. But then that meant we were blocked by the log, and
Yeah.
like we couldn't go until all the boats had passed. So it was kind of like a bad situation either way. But had we felt a little more ballsy, it would have been better definitely to go through the section like capsized and then like, you know, swim over to the right. But like the river was also going very fast, and like we could have just kept drifting, and it would have been really dangerous with all the boats coming. But that's a lot of things to think about when you're in the water, your heart rate's jacked up, there's boats coming at you, and you're in the water, you're losing your foam block, you're losing your food, you might lose your paddles, you might lose your jugs. Like it's a lot going on. Who said that marathon canoe is not technical?
Honestly,
I
it's a
want to speak to
miracle.
them.
Yeah, honestly, it's a miracle that all we lost was a foam block and your food. It could have
Yeah.
been much worse.
Definitely. And someone could have gotten hurt, which nobody got hurt.
Yes, yes.
So then we recouped a little bit after 20 boats passed us. And then we got to Index shortly thereafter. Apparently Wardell was like wondering where we were because like all these boats that we had been with like passed, but we didn't. And he was like looking at his phone, like, where are they? Something must have happened. And then we passed, and like his pit instincts are like, something happened. What did they need? So he asked me in our little flyby, like, what do you need? And I said, we lost our foam block and we lost my food. And he's like, okay, I'll have it at Milford, which is in 7 miles, maybe 8 miles. 8 miles. He's right here. So he's in that time period, he was able to call a bunch of people, ask them for a foam block. They didn't have foam blocks. He somehow got Jeff Pedersen's son's number and found him and got some blocks from him. He asked Susan DeFeo if she had any blocks, and they had like this large boulder of a block for some reason. And he got food, and then he was at Milford. But then I was like, you know what? No, I don't need it yet. I'll just wait until Portlandville. I feel fine. Past him, I was not fine. I needed food because like at the 75-minute mark, if like whatever glycogen stores you have, they're gone by that point. And it was by Milford, I don't know, like 2+ hours in. I really needed food and should have not been a hero. Because that section from like Milford to Portlandville was pretty bad for me. And like my brain was getting all foggy, and that's like kind of when you know your glycogen's gone. And I was like, ooh, this is bad. Like, and let me like drink all of my drink as soon as possible, because I started with Vitargo because I knew it would be hard to eat in that section. And then we kind of ended up with a nice little pack, but stuck with them. Tom and Emma Ellsworth, Maria Schilling, and Greg Zophi, Vincent, father and son, and Ashley and Bob Wissy, who are locals. So they were a really nice crew to be with, all very experienced, chit-chatting with us. But I knew like we're going the same speed as them right now, but I feel like we're gonna pass them at some point, but I don't know when. And I feel like there were points where like you wanted to go, and I was like, combination of like hurting and like we're about to come up to this pit. Like, we're going to pass them and then we're going to fall behind again. Like, let's just stay with them. I don't know. I feel like had we made the move early enough, we could have passed and stayed ahead because our pit was so efficient. And then we could have just stayed ahead of them. But then that also meant, like, who are we going to follow after Goodyear?
Yeah, no, I think we made the right move. You saying like, James, let's take it easy here. I know you're hungry for some boats. And I really was like, I was still like beating myself up that I didn't know how to react on that stick. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna get these boats back. I've got 50 something miles to do it, and I'm just gonna chomp, chomp, chomp like Pac-Man these other boats up. And we there were times when like I really just wanted to go, but between like feeling that like it seems like you were having a hard time because you were, you know, running out of energy, and I recognized that this is an easy section. It'd be a great place to coast, like riding some wakes, keep that heart rate low, burn less fuel. So I think it was definitely the right move to just hang back. We'll pass them later. We've got many more miles to do so, which is what happened. And that was good that we had someone to follow in the sections right after Goodyear.
Now, had I had food or had I taken the food at Milford, we probably could have passed those people and, like, you know, gun past them, but it is what it is. Like, how many minutes we would have made up, I don't really know, because we ended up like 9 minutes after the third place mixed team. Maybe would have made up 3 of those minutes, like maybe, but was it worth it? I think it was worth staying with them, probably. But these are the things that you learn with experience, which I actually, for this race, have never been to the point where I could have been with a pack. So pack riding in a race is new to me and something I'm learning still. But anywho, Portlandville pit, very efficient. Weeping Willow, dock right behind it, coming in, and then there's a foot brace suddenly. We're like, oh, I didn't even know that he would have a foot brace here. Later, we found out the foot brace was a little jaggedy, and it was made by the teeth of my fiance.
That's love and commitment right there.
All hail BEAVERDELL.
It was funny because Maddie held up a square block and a jaggedy block, and she's like, which one do you want? And I was like, I guess I'll take the jaggedy block. It seems like it'll fit. And lo and behold, like, it was perfect. it smooshed in there just right. It gave me just the amount of like leverage I needed with my leg, my feet. At that point, like I could have, like I managed without a foam block. My feet were just kind of resting on the foot of the canoe, the floor of the canoe. I kind of wedged my heels together and I could kind of push off of that. But like my lower back was working a lot harder than it usually does. Thank God we had that foot brace materialize, because I think I would have not been able to, well, I don't even know. I would have been really messed up by the finish. As it is, you know, reveal on like the recovery process. It has taken me a week for my lower back to recover. Everything else healed up in 3 days or less. Lower back, obliques, they were gassed.
He's earned pit master title, pit person of the year. No, pit person for the century, probably, for that one. In the morning, I asked him, what does foam taste like? Does it taste like dedication? And he said, no, it tastes like love. He's a master pit person. All right, so then we had a really efficient pit. then we caught up with our draft pack and we were drafting them through the part that led up to Goodyear. Now this was like 3.5 hours in, and you had not peed yet.
Nope. I had done it before. I knew I could do it. I knew I could do it in an OC1, which was the like sitting position closest to sitting bow on a marathon canoe. I just never got around to like actually practicing in a C2. Call it lack of too much shame. I don't know. Lack of comfort, lack of not wanting to like whatever. But I'd done it once before and I was like, how much different could it be? Turns out it was very different. All the tubes were blocked, and no matter what position I could get myself in, just wasn't enough. To be fair, the first attempt was partly a mental block rather than a physical block because I had people actively cheering like with my name, like go James go, because they could read the letters on the side of the boat, and like that was just a little too weird for me. I just couldn't I couldn't handle people like cheering with my name. I just couldn't go. So I did not. And I thought, well, maybe I can just go like while we're doing this portage coming up. That did not work either. So it was a real struggle. It was an absolute struggle.
Who knew you had to practice peeing yourself? Because all these years you teach yourself to not pee yourself, and then you do.
Yep.
So then the cut happened, and like you could not pee, and then you're like, I'm gonna try peeing while we're walking up this hill. We get to the portage. I forgot that you said that. Wasn't looking at the ground to see if I was, stepping in something I was gonna slip in. Tom and Emma are going at a steady pace. We're just, kind of trotting behind. They put in along with the rest of our pack, and we're kind of at the back of this little group we'd been with. And then we're all heading down the river, and like right away, there's like some kind of nasty rapids that go around a corner, and that's always scary. And I think when we ran it after Wessels, we went almost perpendicular at one point, but then this time we didn't, which was great growth. And then up comes the Goodyear cut, and I yell over to Tom and Emma, are you guys taking it? They're like, yeah, we're taking it. So we follow them. And you cannot paddle it. You have to walk it or run it. And I think people do end up running it. I am not about to break an ankle. Got too many things to do where I need my legs. And then we get to the end, and they're putting in, and then we're putting in. And we see the other two boats that did not take the cut coming by, and it's like, oh, it's the same time cut. And then
not a shortcut.
Not a shortcut. And then we put in, and we keep going. You did not pee.
Nope, not in that extra bonus portage that we got. It didn't happen.
Nope. And then we didn't see Tom and Emma again. And then the other two, I don't remember quite when we passed them, but it was sometime in that section after the cut through almost to Oneonta where we passed them. At one point, I heard one of the boats say, like, they've been this far ahead before, and we caught up to them. And I relayed that message to you, and you're like, nope, zoom.
Yeah, I was like, hell no. I am fighting tooth and nail for every freaking inch that I can get in front of every boat. Yeah, from then on, I recall that like that section, once we got past kind of the rapids downstream of Goodyear, from there for at least through Oneonta, like just trying to pick off one boat after another, sneak up on them, ride them for a little bit, and then we'd kind of pull off and zoom ahead.
Which is exactly what you're supposed to do. So then we came around the corner again, and there was some giant looking rocks, and there was more of them this time. You're like, wait, that it? And I was like, no, that ain't it. And then I saw the abutment, the leftover abutment of the abandoned bridge, and I was like, oh yeah, that was it. And we had watched a boat go right this time, which I guess you could have gone left. I heard some teams went left, but going right, like, you can see the bottom. You could potentially scrape. We did not scrape, luckily. And then we survived the boulder.
Yes, that was a huge relief. I thought to myself, like, okay, I heard on the podcast, and I heard other people say, like, you got to go left. And I was like really prepared, like, okay, we're gonna come around this corner. We're gonna go left. And then like we came around what I thought was this corner, and like 2 or 3 boats went right, and I was like, seems fine. I guess we'll go right.
You just
And
followed the boat in front of you.
yeah,
Marathon. It's so technical. So then when we got to the little pullout section for Oneonta, I saw a mixed boat, kind of pulling in, and I was like, oh, that must be the number 5 boat, I think. And so they were, you didn't want to run them over to, be kind, and we were trotting behind them. I think we could have gone faster in the portage, possibly could have passed them, but that portage is really muddy, so again, don't want to break an ankle. We got in, I can't remember if we ended up launching like before them or after them, or if it was like about the same time, but like shortly thereafter we passed them, which is good. So another team picked off. Not, I don't remember a whole lot from there to Wells Bridge. Do you?
it was pretty flat. There was yeah, that one rapid that is still a little fuzzy that other teams had trouble with. But no, I remember it being flat and grindy, more or less. It all kind of blurred together. I hadn't seen that section before, so nothing was ringing any bells in my memory. So, well, settle in and grind as the good grinders do, and did our usual rhythm of like creep up on a boat, ride on them for a little bit, then whoop, pass them around, rinse and repeat.
I don't remember who we passed in that section, but I kind of, no, that wasn't where we caught up to the Millers.
No, that was downstream of Wells Bridge.
Yeah, well, we just kept going, and then there was a part where I was like, oh, Wells Bridge is coming up. Let's get ready for our next pit. And I think I warned you too soon. And then at some point we were having a back and forth about like, oh, I thought I recognized that part of the river, but oh wait, I don't recognize any part of this river. I don't recognize any of this. It's coming up at some point. And then it was off to the left, and there was a bunch of people there. I was like, I don't think that's it, but we should pull over anyway. And it was.
Thank God.
Oops. And there, Wardell told us that we were about a minute and 20 seconds behind the 4th place team, friends Joe and Sylvie. And I was like, oh, okay, that's less than before. Cool. Yahoo! And then we kept going, and then a couple miles downstream, like maybe I think it's like only a mile and a half, maybe 2 miles by Zav's place, we caught up to them, and we're having a little conversation with them. So talking to Joe, and I was like, hey Joe, how are you feeling? Because Joe's coming off an injury. He's just cruising. He's like, I feel pretty good, but I wish I had more hours. Kudos to you, Joe, for pushing through and doing the race anyway. And then I was like, Joe, you think you guys are in fourth place? He's like, yeah, we were, but now we're 5th place as we're passing them. And we just kept going. And yeah, we stayed ahead of them the rest of the time. And then we caught up with the Millers. There was lots of scary parts after Wells Bridge with like rapids that weren't quite as rapidy as the Wessels race, but still rapidy, and it was nice to have someone to follow through those sections.
Oh yeah, especially the Millers, who I swear are like canoe wizards that know how to like just spot, like sniper the most like perfect 6 inches of the river to go through. And they were great guides for us to follow. If I could see what they did to get through this section, and if you were able to get over to the same spot, like boom, it was simple. Monkey see, monkey do. There
There
was a
was
section.
go ahead.
There was a section where like we came up on Megan and Kelly and another pack, and we thought like, oh, we're seeing them get out.
Yeah, that's what I was going to talk about.
Oh yeah, we saw them get out,
And they
and
weren't that far in front of us at that point.
no, we were creeping up on them. And we thought like, okay, well, all right, well, it looks like we're gonna have to portage this little section that was just a little too shallow for us. So like, I'm prepared for it. We're cruising in, jump out, and the Millers just like found that perfect 6 inches and just right past all of us. And it's like, well, dang it, now we gotta pass them again.
Yep. And we just kept following them, but like at that point, Megan and Kelly made their move. We were no longer a couple of boat lengths behind them. They just like went on turbo mode and we're gone. We were like, that's it. We're not beating them. It's over. Rest in peace, us. It was a little sad. It was a sad moment. Great for them because they're our friends, but just it's sad. Like maybe.
Yeah, but really kudos to them for like running a fantastic race. And that just goes to show you, if you aren't trying to chase down boats for 50 miles, you probably have a little more in the tank towards the end.
Maybe you do. Yeah, we wouldn't know. Anywho, I needed more calories. You couldn't eat anymore, so we took the emergency pit at Unadilla. You didn't take anything except a watch adjustment. And
Well, actually, Maddie insisted on slapping me a bag of oranges.
Oh,
And
that's when the oranges came.
yes, that was, as we will learn later, clutch. Thank goodness.
Yeah, so we needed emergency calories and we needed them fast because there was only like, I don't know, 12 or maybe like, I forget how many miles there are to the end, but we needed calories to make it through. For that last push. And I think you were starting to go loopy because like, you had no data, I had mine, and you're like, I was like, what do you want me to tell you? Like, and you said at one point nothing, and then you were like, okay, maybe tell me when there's like 60 miles on the GPS, because that meant there was about like 3 left and it was time to like push. Because at one point you're like, I can push for like 40 minutes. So like for a long time, I wasn't really focusing, and I was like doing math in my head, like, okay, if we're going at 7 miles an hour, what's that pace per mile? Okay, I don't know what it is, but what's 6 miles an hour? I know that's about a 10-minute mile. How do I calculate it from there? And then by that time, the watch had gotten to 60 miles. Is like, I'm telling him at 60, turning on the GoPro, and then we're just going for the rest of the time. How are you feeling at that point?
Terrible. Like, I am not doing well. I had my last sip of water that I will be able to take, because my body was like, there's no more room for liquids in your system, sir. You're just gonna have to deal with it. And then I had eaten my last thing that I had planned in my baggies, because I hadn't planned the oranges, but thank goodness they were there. And like, I had eaten my last thing because I felt like my gag reflex was just so strong. Like, my body was telling me, don't eat this food. Don't eat this. You hate eating. Eating is terrible. I knew I needed to eat, but it was also starting to like not sit well with me. I think I was getting a gut bomb there. And I was like, well, only thing that's left is these oranges. Maybe I'll try an orange. And I just like, it hit my system. much easier than all of these like much heavier stuff did. And I woke up and like I could feel my my blood sugar balancing out. I had a little more in the tank. I definitely wasn't going to be able to push for 40 minutes. I had measured down to like 20 to 30 minutes. And after I had those oranges, that was accurate. If I did not have those oranges, I think I don't know if I had any push in me left at all.
Good thing you had them.
Yeah. Noting to self for next time, always pack oranges in the last pit per Bordell's recommendation.
Mm-hmm. And let's see. We at that point, I don't know if we were trying to like pass any more teams. We came up on a team from Michigan, and I didn't realize at the time that I knew the stern. No, I knew one of the guys in there because he'd done Chattajack, and he and I chatted a little bit about that race before, and going out to Michigan, you meet a lot of people. I didn't realize it was him at that point, but I forget if he's the one that asked us how much longer to the finish or not. Yeah, yeah. And I was like, I don't know, a couple miles, like 3 miles or whatever. It's like, 63 and change. And then I noticed on their shirt that they were sponsored by the radio station that does the ensemble broadcast the night of the race. And I was like, you guys from Michigan? They're like, yeah. And I was like, cool. And then in my head, since I was like, tired, I was like finishing the conversation in my head. Like, okay. And then we passed them. And then we got to the finish line. We could see it in the distance. You can hear the announcements. You can smell the chicken. I was feeling pretty good at that point, honestly.
I was bottoming out. But for pure adrenaline at that point, I had an actual like sprint left in me. Because like we were coming up on, I think, the number 2 women's team,
Number 3.
the number 3 women's team, and I was just like, I had some adrenaline left. I'm like, let's close that gap. Let's do it. Let's see if we can get as close to them as possible. And we hammered it. We crossed the finish line. I completely fell to pieces.
You were a puddle.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. Everything that I was holding in, all the feelings from during the race, from before the race, all the like physical like pain. It was probably some sort of nutrition, like blood sugar crash happening. I just like, bleh.
You didn't
Yeah.
barf. You were just a puddle.
Yes. Yeah, no, I did not actually barf. I didn't feel like barfing either. That was a plus. No, just all the feelings came out. I like straight up ugly cried. I'm not ashamed to admit it. And it was a big accomplishment. I think we like, despite all of their hurdles, like including the literal hurdle in the race, I think we put on a good show.
We put on a very good show for 2 people that were finishing a master's program like the spring leading up / like both of us the year leading up, like managing other like paddling disciplines and training in other races and like teams for you, and not being only marathon paddlers. It's like it's a lot, trying to be like a young professional at this age, trying to be a competitive endurance athlete, and especially for someone doing it for their first time, where you haven't seen all of the river before, you've never done it before, so you don't know in your brain if you can do it, even though you've trained enough and like you have plenty of information from other people. Like there's like still so much unknown, so it is a big accomplishment. Maybe more first time Clinton finishers should ugly cry, because it's a big deal.
Yeah, and I think it's important that I remind myself, like, oh yeah, we have come pretty far, because all I can see is like all the things that I should have done better, or should have done a different way and think to myself like, oh God, I've just got so much to learn. I will never get to like, the top folks. Like, oh gosh, that's just unattainable. But then again, like, where am I starting? This is like first time Clinton that I've ever done. And from as far as I can tell, having done the Clinton only 4 times is still new compared to some folks that have done this for like decades and know every square inch of this river at every river level. So like, it was good stuff. It was really good stuff. It was really hard, but it was, I think it'll go down as like one of the like biggest things that I'm proud of, that like we did it. we did it despite everything.
We did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somehow, I don't know, maybe it was because I like after I had my nutrition with me, had eaten enough, like I was very chipper. I had slight issues getting out of the boat. I had to roll because like putting pressure on my leg with my calf, it finally started to swell. That wasn't happening. So I rolled, and I think BOULDER was a little concerned. I was like, no, I'm actually fine. I was walking around chatting with people, like, completely there mentally. And someone had come up to me, and she's like, in kind of like rough as shape, granted, like she had come top 10 and first place mixed, and she was like, why do you look so good right now? It's like, I don't know. And it's like, now that I've been thinking about it over the past week, and it's not for a lack of trying, but it also does make me rethink, like maybe I should have gone harder in some of those spots where I was holding back. I don't know. Something to experiment with next time.
Yeah. Well, if she was asking, why do you look so good? You should have just said, well, go check out my partner. He's a complete mess right now. I also rolled out of the boat, and
Keep going.
I also rolled out of the boat. And I rolled on the dock and then off the dock into the water, because I had not peed in 9 hours, and I had reached a new level of, I got to use the bathroom. I sat down. I was completely out of it, and it was magic. Sweet release. And then some other folks came by. I think the women's team, the women's team that we were chasing, she's like, "Is this spot taken?" I'm like, "If you want." So there were like 3 of us all crouched in the river, like taking care of business, I guess. I don't know. Or just like feeling the cold water, and after being in the hot sun for 9 hours, and just relieved that we were done with this huge ordeal. And I just kind of sat there. I don't know how long I sat there because I was pretty out of it. I attempted after a while, like someone talked to me, a buddy from another canoe club talked to me. I don't remember what I said. I didn't recognize him at first because I think I was just that far gone. And then I attempted to walk up the little hill. I started wheezing, so that was not good. I probably should have been more panicked, but I wasn't. Someone helped me up the hill, sat me down, and was like, "Here, honey, I'm gonna give you some like gummy bears." So I just like slammed some gummy bears, and I felt like 5% better. And that's when you probably saw me like basically crawl over to our boat and just face plant on the ground. And then someone suggested, how about you go hang out in the shade? I was like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. I was like guided to the shade, had some more food, and then guided around to like get my rookie plaque, and it didn't really feel coherent, and I wasn't able to stand up straight. I was like stuck in this forward lean that I had been holding for 9 hours, even while standing. I didn't feel right until after I had that chicken dinner. Then I was coherent again. It took quite a bit of snacking to get me back to normal. I had never been that far gone before. There was one race where I felt like chilled, um, also due to lack of nutrition and poor nutrition. I had never like basically felt drunk uh, off of like lack of food and blood sugar crashing before.
That'll do it to you. But now you know. Now you know what it feels like. And I don't know. I feel like the worst I felt ever after the Clinton was my first time, and every time after it's been better.
Yeah, hopefully, hopefully the next one I won't be a complete incoherent mess, and I'll be able to socialize with people afterwards.
Speaking of the next one, what are you gonna do?
Oh man. Well, okay. I know immediately after the Clinton, I was like, oh God, I never want to do that again. And then by the end of the day, I was like, okay, I could be talked into doing that again at some point, far in the future. And then, now it's like a week later, and I think to myself, like, maybe not so far in the future. I have a different race in mind for next year. That's around this time, and I don't think I could do them back to back because they're 2 weeks apart, and I just don't want to mess with that. I might hurt myself.
I think you can do it.
Well, I'll try getting through. So this race is called the 7048. It's happening this coming weekend, actually, on June. What is it? June 11th.
11th.
Yeah. And so it's a 70 miler. It's overnight. It's kind of a mix between the Clinton and the Asable, but in the ocean in the Puget Sound. So I'm hopeful that like all of the training and experience through this race is going to serve me well for that one.
But what about the next Clinton? What are you doing for that?
Oh boy. Um, you know, uh, running it in C1 actually sounds pretty fun. I did notice that the field was a bit on the smaller side for C1. I don't know if that's usual.
I think so. It's not like big. The bigger fields are the C2 races.
Okay. Well, so maybe I'll reevaluate. I imagine it'll get kind of lonely. Just paddling by myself, watching the C2s go by me.
Lonely James.
Yeah. I do like a good grind, but that might be a little too much grind for my taste. So I'll feel it out, but I have a feeling I will be back and it won't be very far in the future.
So afterward, we unpuddled you and made our way over, hobbled our way over to an Indian restaurant in downtown Oneonta. Very delicious. And then
Very
we
necessary.
went and got ice cream, and I have this video of you walking around.
Yeah. I didn't know at the time what was wrong with me. I thought just like I was locked forward, and I think it was a combination of like my lower back just being completely fried and also my hips, like my hip flexors all around like my pelvis and my glutes were just like so tight. It just wouldn't release. So I've been trying to release them all week. And I'm back to like fully full. I'm still not as flexible as I would like, but I'm not hunched over like I used to be.
The things we do to our bodies for these races.
Indeed.
So, as someone that is no longer a first-time Clinton racer, what tips do you have for people who are looking to do it next year for the first time?
Oh gosh, I would say prioritize spending as much time in the boat that you will race in and with the partner that you will race with as much as possible. I mean, I managed to pull off spending a bunch of time in a stock C1 being like good enough, and then I got some time with some other like local paddlers who are also training for the Clinton. um, but it's not quite the same. You've got a special you got a special relationship with your partner in like your communication, your understanding of each other's quirks, both like behavioral, but also like just physically, like how do they behave in the boat? Do they have a left lean? Are they doing anything to compensate for it? In a certain in a certain situation, do they always do this thing? And then you're same with your stern paddler. Like you get used to the way that they do things. The person that I practiced with, he called changes slightly differently, and I had to like shift my brain every time I go into uh, the boat with you, because you call your changes a little quicker. He always made sure to like have an extra stroke, like almost a hut ho instead of just a hut. So I had to like do that. So yeah, maximize time, like mimicking the conditions as much as you can in like your boat and your partner, and then just like do these practice runs on technical water. Like that was the best kind of work that we did. And I think if we had done more of it, like all of those little tiny skills and intuitions and reflexes, like those just get maximized. So that's definitely where I would spend more time next time.
Are there any like other lessons that you learned, whether they're paddling or preparation or nutrition, yada yada?
I think I learned that well, I think what I learned is that there are definitely completely different ways of approaching a paddle sport. Like I had been immersed in dragon boat and outrigger canoe for so long, and the way that the marathon community functions is very different, very organic, not like strong affiliations in the same way that we operate with like clubs and teams. And I really enjoy kind of just that like organic, give and take, helping of sharing resources, at which it was really important in being able to lean on others to figure out how to get into this very challenging but rewarding sport. Constantly, people were happy to share information about like conditions or like how to do stuff. And so I hadn't really ever needed to rely on others to learn and like make training happen as much as I did for preparing for this race. So I think that was really important. Like I learned how to like really how to leverage the community to for our own success, and also ways that I could I look forward to being able to give back to whoever newcomer rookie is like entering the sport, and like, what do I do? And I can be like, oh, I was just there, I can help, let me help you out. And that's probably how everybody else thinks of it the same way too. Like everyone remembers like, I was a rookie once, I needed help, let me give back. So that's a fun one.
I will say, like, of all the lessons that I learned throughout this year preparing for the Clinton, like that was a big one for me too. But on the other side of it, being the more experienced person, like, oh, shoot, he doesn't know how to do this. Darn, I have to explain it. Got to take off my teacher hat and dust it off from the backpack over the weekend and shove it back on my head. And like realizing like what it is an undertaking, taking in like a new person under your wing. And for people looking to do that, I know a lot of people are like very generous with their time and their resources and everything. I am not as generous with my time and resources because I really value like my time to myself. And
Well, and not only that, like your time is very, very limited. You had not
super
much to
limited.
give.
I think like part of it's just like being a young professional, like especially someone who's in my field of work, living in a city where it's really hard to get somewhere to paddle. Like my time is super limited, and I'm like very like panicky about making sure I have enough time for my own training. So I guess like for people that are kind of in my position, it still is doable to take a new person under your wing, but you have to make sure that it's a special person who like maybe is your friend or like is someone who's been like thoroughly vetted to like, you know, be someone who's going to be willing to learn and put in the effort.
Yeah, you want you want your rookie to be coachable.
For sure.
Yeah. I like to think of myself as coachable, but they're like hopping in the bow seat. It was never more apparent that I had a lack of experience than this past year. And you know, I just wish that I had a greater capacity to like absorb every single stinking thing, because I know like putting that in the, you know, memory chest for later, I know everything would have served me well better. I recognize, you know, there's only so much you can absorb at once, but I, you know,
That's something else I learned too, is like, oh, I'm overwhelming him with information. I'm gonna have to repeat this later. Like just kind of accepting that in my brain, which like should already be accepted given that I'm a teacher of young children, because like it's kind of the same thing. You have to say the same thing over and over in different ways many times. And like that's just part of the job.
yeah, turns out you don't grow out of that no matter how good of a paddler you become.
And I think that's important to recognize for other people who are trying to cross over into other paddling disciplines too, is like recognizing it takes time. You need someone who's going to be able to explain it to you in an understandable way, which is going to be someone that knows that you're experienced and isn't going to like talk down to you. And just like, you're not going to be a master at it right away. You're going to make a lot of mistakes along the way, and you can't learn it all at once, no matter how much you really want to.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And you know, there's going to be times where you're going to have faith in your rookie when they're probably not going to have faith in themselves. And
Like mid race.
mid race, leading up to the race. So I appreciate how like you just, you know, you kept me going even when I didn't think I was doing well, or like I felt like a failure. Like, so I really appreciated that.
You got it, friend. All right. I think we're going to wrap this up. Thanks, James, for talking to me for almost 2 hours about the Clinton. I really don't know who the heck is going to listen to this, but I'm going to publish it anyway. But if anything, you'll look back on this one day and enjoy it, and it'll help you remember things.
Absolutely.
All right.